Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Parham, editorial page editor for the Arizona Daily Star. In tonight's AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll get a look at what the new Violence Against Women Act means for universities. Hear from U.S. Senator Jeff Flake about the immigration reform proposal he's working on. And meet two people who are encouraging others to learn about mental illnesses in our community. But first, a look at today's top stories.
Police departments will have a more difficult time destroying seized weapons if Senate Bill 2455 becomes law. The bill says police departments cannot destroy a seized gun unless it was what the bill calls an unlawful firearm used in the commission of a felony. The city of Tucson drew the ire of some state lawmakers when a gun buyback earlier this year was held and the weapons brought in were slated to be destroyed. The Senate gave preliminary approval to the measure this afternoon. Environmental groups are contending that off-road vehicles used by the Border Patrol are damaging ecologically sensitive areas. The Sierra Club and the Center for Biological Diversity say damage to microorganisms in the dust can affect cacti and grasses for hundreds of years. The environmental groups also say the tracks can alter the flow of water in the desert. The U.S. Department of Interior said in a 2011 report there were about 8,000 miles of tracks in the Cabeza Prieta National Wildlife Refuge. There are also concerns about damage to Organ Pipe National Monument. And Arizona is getting a B when it comes to letting people know how the state spends its money. The National Public Interest Research Group grades the state on budget transparency and says Arizona needs to do a better job letting people know about information like who's getting economic development tax credits. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
President Obama recently signed into law a new version of the Violence Against Women Act. It strengthens and reauthorizes practices that prevent sexual violence against women and provide resources for victims of abuse. This version also includes new requirements for universities and community colleges regarding sexual assault. Fernanda Chavarri sat down with representatives at the University of Arizona to find out how health centers will be affected by the changes.
National studies show 1 in 5 women are victims of sexual assault while in college. Dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking happen often, but many times go unreported. The updated version of the Violence Against Women Act includes a section known as the Campus Save Act that specifically targets universities.
This new legislation, this component of the Violence Against Women Act that focuses on college students is really very comprehensive, and I was really excited to see this legislation come through personally. For us, I think in many ways it affects my job, and that I think it supports sort of the work I do already as a prevention educator.
Mckendry is a violence prevention specialist with the Oasis program at the University of Arizona. She says the Campus Sexual Violence Elimination Act requires colleges to have outreach campaigns that educate students on the risks and resources surrounding sexual violence.
Hi, would you like to play some Jeopardy?
Yes, I would.
We do conduct a lot of outreach with fraternities and sororities, and they are a group that we want to reach out to and make sure that they're aware of services and receive some of our prevention programming on campus. I think generally at colleges and universities nationwide and across different kinds of students, alcohol is one thing that at the Campus Health Service we talk about a lot and that we're concerned about. And while alcohol certainly doesn't cause sexual assault, it often is associated with sexual assault in that someone who is taking advantage of another person might use alcohol as a weapon or a tool to facilitate harming that person.
The new legislation requires changes to the way universities handle allegations of sexual assault. It also clarifies the rights for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking on campus. Dr. Kathleen Young says the added requirements will not be a challenge for the U of A.
Fortunately, we've already been doing a lot of the things that are spelled out in this act in terms of the way these issues are investigated and the transparency. and also the prevention work. The prevention work, the education and outreach, that's the piece that most directly impacts and is related to the work that we do here at the Oasis program.
The Campus SAVE Act improves data collection on sexual assault and other domestic violence crimes on campus. Now, the annual crime report that universities are required to compile will include stalking.
In terms of the numbers estimated to occur and that what we actually hear about, there's a big discrepancy. Then on campus, we have a number of different options in terms of where and how people can report. So they can report to UAPD. They can report to the Dean of Students office, who can and then must conduct a separate investigation. They can also report confidentially to the Oasis program. And the Oasis program and me as a psychologist, other mental health practitioners here, are about the only folks who are not required to then pass that information on to the UAPD. So the numbers in terms of what I hear about may be higher than the numbers that are actually reported to UAPD.
In 2011, there were 6 cases of criminal sex offenses reported to University of Arizona police. That number was significantly higher than the previous year, when 1 criminal sex offense was reported.
In the time I've been here, in terms of folks coming in and seeking services, relationship violence and sexual assault are pretty equal in terms of the amounts of students seeking services or staff or faculty for those issues. We see less stalking related cases. That doesn't mean that less of them occur, but that's just what I've seen so far.
The new law requires university officials to provide bystander intervention initiatives to prevent sexual assault. The Oasis program at the U of A already uses a bystander intervention class called Step Up,
which was developed originally in the UA Athletics Department by Becky Bell around the year 2000. And Campus Health evaluated that program and adapted it and further developed it here from 2009 to 2011 after receiving a Department of Education grant. So we have some great data that shows that students actually are more comfortable and intend to intervene in risky or potentially problematic situations more often after receiving this program and sitting through the presentation and doing some role playing.
She says the program also offers free self-defense classes as a form of risk reduction, which is a requirement under the new version of the Violence Against Women Act.
A lot of students like self-defense classes. We recommend them, however, we don't recommend them as the only form of programming for sexual assault because they require a lot of the person who's potentially the victim, and we like to focus our efforts on the people who are perpetrating, whose fault it is that this is happening, and try to stay away from blaming victims for what happens to them because it's absolutely not their fault.
U.S. Senator Jeff Flake is one of 8 working on federal immigration reform. He visited the border last week with 3 of his colleagues to get a look at what border enforcement means now. The 8 senators working on changing the nation's border security and immigration laws say their proposal is going to require compromise from both sides. Christopher Conover caught up with Senator Flake today in Tucson.
Senator, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of talk in the last few days, especially about a compromise getting struck on immigration reform with labor and business. What's the compromise that got struck?
Well, that's the thorniest part of the immigration debate, I think. It's what sunk it 5 years ago when an amendment was attached which would have sunsetted any guest worker plan after 5 years. And for too many people, that was the poison pill. We needed to make sure that that didn't happen this time. And if we want a secure border, for example, one of the things that we need is a legal framework for people to come and go and to recognize our labor needs. You have the unions on one side who are generally reluctant to have people come in who might depress American wages. You have the business community on the other side who is saying we need access when we have labor shortages. And so what we got is an agreement that somewhere along that continuum we picked a place where we think that both sides can live with. Nobody's very happy about. A lot of people will complain, but sometimes that's a mark of an agreement that can pass the Senate or the House, is one that nobody likes very much, but they can live with.
Business and labor were involved in this, as we've said. That may surprise some people that the private sector was involved in the crafting of legislation, but obviously it affects them at the end of the day.
It does. In the end, you need to go to business to say, where are your shortages? What labor needs do you have? With the unions and the employee side, you have to say, where do you feel that this might depress wages, or where there are sufficient workers that we aren't accounting for right now. And so obviously you go to stakeholders involved. That's not unlike any legislation that you craft. You always will try to go to those who are affected and say, you guys live this, you have to implement it. Will this work?
Over the weekend, I saw some quotes from Senator Rubio, a member of the Gang of Eight, as you are, trying to get this immigration compromise put together. And it sounded like he was walking it back a little, that maybe we won't see a bill as soon as you all get back to Washington. Is there a hang-up, or is this somebody who's just not raising expectations too high yet?
Well, I think that there has been some concern that this Gang of Eight, somehow this secret group that's going to craft something that we won't know what's in it until we pass it, kind of thing. And I think what Senator Rubio was saying, and I agree with him, is this bill needs to move through regular order. I sit on the Judiciary Committee, which will consider this legislation, and I can tell you, the chairman is waiting for the bill to be written. He's going to schedule markups, perhaps some more hearings. Some hearings have been held over the past couple of weeks. Over the past number of years, untold hearings have been held on this as well. But we want to make sure that people understand what's in the legislation and that they buy in. It does no good to try to ram something through the Senate, because if we did that, the House would never go for it, and they would be reluctant to support it. So it doesn't do anybody any good to try to ram it through, and that's not what we're going to do here.
In 2007, you were in Washington, other chamber, immigration reform going through, Senator McCain, Senator Kyle. It looked like it was going to pass. The White House was behind it, and at the last second, the whole thing blew up. Right. Obviously, you don't have a perfect crystal ball, but is that going to happen this time, or are you confident that something can get through?
We hope that it doesn't. What brought it down, the amendment that actually sunk it last time, was an amendment on future flows, or the guest worker plan. It would have sunsetted the guest worker plan, and that just upset the agreement that was had. With this agreement that we have now among the Gang of Eight, and with industry and others generally, if not supportive, at least resigned to it, then we stand a better chance of having that move through the process. There are no guarantees, though. There will be amendments that will be friendly amendments, ones that perfect the bill, make it better, and that will likely be adopted. But we hope to be able to stick together and convince our colleagues that this is the right approach. And although it can be perfected, the general agreement that we have is a good one.
You were just speaking with the Tucson Hispanic Chamber, talking about immigration reform, and one of the things you talked about was a path to citizenship. In some quarters, that's very controversial. What is the agreement, and since the Gang of Eight is a bipartisan group, the agreement as it stands at the moment?
Well, I don't want to get into details, but what's been in the press already, it is for those who are here illegally now, they will be able to be eligible to get on a path to citizenship. This doesn't confer a citizenship or a green card, just doesn't hand one out. Those who are here illegally now, and if they subject themselves to a background check and they have no felonies on the record, they will be able to apply and qualify for a probationary kind of status, or a visa that allows them to continue to work. But that's no guarantee that they'll ever become a citizen. But they'll have the opportunity to apply for that over a period of 10 years, or after a period of 10 years. And then they can get on that path. They have that opportunity to, but it's no guarantee. They won't be able to access that path until a couple of things happen. One, we have sufficient border security. And two, those who are in the line right now, who are going through the legal orderly process in their home country, who've waited patiently and have done it the right way. Until they move through that line, nobody will be able to access this line.
You also related to the audience at the Hispanic Chamber that you grew up in a ranching family. You have some experience working with and hiring migrant workers, et cetera. Does that change your view, do you think, as opposed to Senator Schumer or even Senator McCain?
Well, I think it certainly informs my view on the subject. I've just, having worked alongside people who come, I've just never been able to place them all in a criminal class and say that, these people are trying to game our system. Most of them are just trying to make a better life for themselves and their families. And if you can, and we benefited, not just our farm or our ranch, but the economy in general benefited from the labor that was provided. But obviously we want it done in a legal way and not an illegal way. And so I think it has informed my views on this, and mostly just maybe on a more humane side to see, what really motivates the vast majority of those who come here illegally.
Let me switch gears for a moment. We have about 2 minutes left. Gun control is going to come up, a vote fairly soon on background checks. Ads are being run against you here in Tucson, saying you've changed your opinion on background checks. Did you change your opinion on
Not
background
at all. I've favored in the past and still favor strengthening our background check system, particularly as it relates to those with mental illness. Right now in Arizona, I think there are more than 100,000 adjudicated cases of individuals who have been declared not in a position to own a firearm. Yet too few of those, only I think fewer than 10,000 of those records have made it into the national background system. And so we aren't screening as we should, some in the criminal class and some who have mental deficiencies. And until we do that, we're going to have a lot of problems. So we do need to strengthen it, but the universal background check, as is contemplated by the Schumer bill that's before us, just is a bridge too far. It, I think, impacts legal rights that people have to own or transfer firearms, and so I think that goes too far.
I've heard opponents of the Schumer bill say if I were to die, I want to pass my guns to my kids, that it causes a problem with background checks. What's the difference between that and, let's say, passing a car down? I'd have to re-register it if my parents gave me a car.
Oh, I think when you look at a system where a father is unable to pass a gun on to his son without being subjected to take the gun to a federal licensed dealer, to sometimes have that gun have to remain there for a time, to have a situation where if you want to go out and hunt quail with your cousin, if you loan him your shotgun, then you may have run afoul of the law. That's not what is right and proper, and I think that most people would see that as going too far. So we do need to make changes to our background check system. We do need to strengthen it. But what is contemplated on the floor right now in the legislation goes too far.
All right, Senator, we have reached the end of our time. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
The war of words on the Korean Peninsula ratcheted up today as South Korea's president said her nation would respond strongly if North Korea strikes.
We assess the latest rhetoric. Is it just brinkmanship, or does it reflect the communist state's ability to mount an attack?
Then we update 2 shootings. Texas Rangers hunt for the killer of a district attorney and his wife. And prosecutors in Colorado seek the death penalty for the gunman in the movie theater massacre.
From India, Fred de Sam Lazaro reports on efforts to tackle violence against women after the gang rape and murder of a medical student last year.
Hari Srinivasan examines the case for and against using public money to help pay for private schools.
Plus, on the Daily Download, the conversation about same-sex marriage turns Facebook red.
That's all ahead on tonight's NewsHour.
Neal Cash recorded a song last year and didn't love it. And then she had an idea.
Can you find a really good track of submarine noises?
A chill ran through me.
I'm Steve Inskeep. We'll listen as Neal Cash adds depth to an album in progress on the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
My body for good.
Discussions about mental health are in the news daily. A Tucson group is focusing on public understanding of the issue. The Schorr Family Award recognizes people working to further mental health awareness. Joining us in the studio is Si Schorr, who established the award with his wife Ellie, and Neal Cash, CEO of the Community Partnership of Southern Arizona. Neal and Si, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us. Great to be here.
Neal, can you start out and just give us a little overview of what the Community Partnership is, the Schorr Family Award, and kind of how they've all come together?
The Community Partnership of Southern Arizona is the regional behavioral health authority for this region, Tucson and Pima County. We're contracted by the state of Arizona to basically oversee and manage the system of care for folks with serious mental illnesses, children with severe emotional disturbances, and people with substance abuse and general mental health problems. And we implement that through a series of contracts with providers throughout the community. So we're responsible for the overall management of the system, the financing of the system, strategic planning and development of a service continuum that really reaches out to really impact the entire community.
So you're really at the heart of mental health and behavioral health services in the community.
Yeah, I think our charge is not only to provide services to people who are eligible and enrolled in our system, and that's primarily right now a Medicaid population, but we're also responsible for creating a safety net, if you will, for persons who have a mental health crisis. And so we have a really elaborate and I think a very well-defined crisis service network that reaches out to the 1 million people in Pima County.
1 million people, good. Can you talk then about how your involvement with the Schorr Family Award and how that came about?
Yeah, this has been a great experience for us, and I've had the honor of working both with Si and with Ellie Schorr for literally decades, and to be part of their family award and to have seen the evolution and the recipients of this award really is a benefit not only to us but for the entire community. The work that they have done, the advocacy work that they have done in this community, and both Si and Ellie has a long, long history of being involved in actually forming the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill here in Pima County. She was a legislator and sponsored a number of bills really to enhance the effectiveness of our mental health system, including financing for that. So this is not something that just came about. It really is where I think their commitment is rooted. And for the Community Partnership of Southern Arizona to play a role in this award, we're just very honored and privileged.
Now, Si, Representative Ron Barber is going to be this year's winner, and his family has established the Fund for Civility, Respect, and Understanding after he was wounded in the January 8th, 2011 shootings. And mental health is one of the targets of that, but I understand your history with him goes back much further than that.
Yes, I've known Ron for 30, 40 years, and he's always been an advocate for the mentally ill. So he was a logical, if not a compelling recipient of this year's award. We established the award, Ellie and I, in the 90s. Its purpose was, and we established it through the University of Arizona Foundation and the School of Medicine at the university. Its purpose is to lessen stigma of the mentally ill so that people can begin to understand, talk to, and relate to what are the objects of what are the aspects of mental illness that the public should be aware of. When the terrible tragedy of January 8th occurred, and it happened, and Ron was right in the mix of it all, he responded in a way that very few others, I think, would have responded to. Very often, if something involving the mentally ill happens and it causes damage to others, you do not see the victim respond in a way that Ron Barber characteristically did. So when I read his transcript, I knew this was Ron, so it didn't come as any surprise to me. But when I read the transcript, of what he said to the court at the sentencing of Loeffner, I thought to myself, hey, if this person was a representative from South Dakota or Virginia, and he was in this circumstances and reacted the way he did, would you think that he should be a worthy recipient of this award? And I felt that just because he's a friend and my congressman shouldn't preclude him from being considered. And what he said is so important.
Could you read it for us?
Sure.
Just briefly, maybe just a small excerpt.
Well, just a few lines.
Okay.
At the time of the sentencing, when Ron spoke, he said, "We must renew our efforts to increase community awareness and knowledge of the symptoms, prevention, and treatment of mental illness. We know for a fact that 90% of people with a mental illness never commit a violent act." In addressing the defendant, he said, "Your behaviors preceding the shooting should have alerted others that you needed mental health treatment. Had this happened, the violent acts you committed might never have taken place." This is not the kind of reaction that one would get from the ordinary victim of a crime. And for Ron Barber to have not only said this, but actually felt it and believed it, I thought was a tribute to the way Ron Barber has lived out his life.
I think Si mentioned something that's very important, and it's the word stigma. And stigma really, for me, means that people don't understand something and even fear it. And it's usually part of a lack of education. And I think the biggest barrier that we face is stigma, because that leads to discrimination. And being able to educate people and being able to inform people about mental illness and what mental illness is, what resources are available in the community, and how do you get people to those resources ahead of something that ultimately and unfortunately results in something so tragic, is really what the Community Partnership of Southern Arizona is about. It's what Ron has been about, and it's what this award is about.
Well, talk to us about the award. What's involved with it? When will it be given?
Well, I think, Si?
Well, the award will be presented on this Thursday, at 3 o'clock at the Oasis Center, which is on the campus of the Arizona State School for the Deaf and Blind. It's on West Speedway.
Now what does Representative Barber get as part of this award?
Well, he'll receive the award and the recognition. We will have, there ordinarily is a financial recompense, but under the rules of Congress, one cannot be offered to a member of Congress. But the fact is that Ron will be participating in a discussion and will be talking. Neal will be there and answering questions as well. So it's 3 o'clock Thursday at the Oasis Center at the Arizona School.
Thank you both so much for being here.
Great.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
To post a comment about any of today's stories or keep up with the latest news, go online to our website, azpm.org. I'm Maria Parham. Thanks for watching.